On today's Locked On Pelicans, I'm going to tell you one thing I absolutely, under no circumstances, will do this season, and it involves Jose Alvarado. Plus, don't expect any surprises in training camp, and we've got some uniform talk in the Wednesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Wednesday, we're going to talk Jose Alvarado and his impact on the court. We've got a couple of new additions to the Pelicans for training camp. I'll let you know who they are. Does anyone have a chance of making the roster? And of course, jersey talk. We've seen the new leak of the City Edition jersey. We're going to break it all down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen to Locked On Pelicans Monday through Friday. And now, if you're a longtime listener, particularly the past season, kind of two, you've heard me profess how much I enjoy Jose Alvarado as a player, right? Like, look at the jersey right behind me here. He's one of my favorite players on the team. But one thing I have done, and I'm owning up to this repeatedly over the past year, is kind of underestimate him, right? Whether it's just that he's undersized, and he is. There's some limitations to his game, and there are. But when you look at this player, this is someone who just makes a massive, massive impact in a positive way on the court. So we can look at all the stats. We can look at, the height listed, which is a stat technically. Sometimes, and I'm a big stats guy, but I'm also an impact, a feel, an eye test kind of guy too. And Jose Alvarado passes that with like the most flying colors possible. And he does it every single year now, 3 seasons at the NBA level. And I'm bringing this up today because of a tweet from, it's Matt Moore, who's one of the hosts of Locked On Nuggets. He's also with the Action Network at HP Basketball. And he has a tweet from about a week ago that says, quote, Jose Alvarado is never going to win Sixth Man of the Year. And I genuinely think he's the most impactful bench player in the league and has been for multiple seasons. Honestly, to get someone who knows basketball as well as Matt Moore does, friend of the show, I've been on Locked On Nuggets with him. He co-hosts a day of Locked On NBA, all of that. He gets it, right? This is a guy who loves stats, loves other things. But Jose Alvarado is just an impactful player, and it's really as simple as that. Someone followed up with them going, hey, would you rather have TJ McConnell or Jose Alvarado? And Matt Moore says, close, but both are awesome, but Alvarado. The Pelicans were plus 12 in net rating with Jose on the floor. He made just about every lineup combination work. The defensive impact, the pace, the ability to get teams backpedaling, it's just so high. He kind of nailed it, right? Like Jose Alvarado is kind of an intangible guy, but when you look at, and this is where the stats back him up on all of this, right? He just makes an impact in any way that you use him. There's just something about this player in Jose that is conducive to winning. And this is important for the team. They don't have as much depth maybe as they had a year ago. Losing Najee Marshall was a big blow to this team, I think. If Trey Murphy gets into the starting lineup, that takes a key bench player off your bench rotation and puts him in with the starters. The Pelicans won so many of their games last year because the bench won their minutes and crushed the opponent. Not conducive to winning in the playoffs, but that'll win you games in the regular season. While we want the starters to win their minutes at a much higher rate or just win them at all compared to last year, You also still want the bench to be brutally effective. And Jose Alvarado is going to be a big, important part of that. And I hope they have the right type of spot in the rotation for him because he should be in there. And so this season, what I am not going to do is underestimate Jose Alvarado. There were moments last year when I thought he was just going to fall out of the rotation entirely, that Jordan Hawkins was going to take his spot with the shooting, especially after that Dallas game. This year, We're not underestimating Jose Alvarado this year. We know the impact that he makes. He had the highest on-off net rating of any player on the team by a good bit. It goes Jose Alvarado, about 3 more, plus 9.8. Next closest was Trey Murphy at 5.7. So, about 4 more than the next closest guy. Matt Moore mentioned the net rating in all of the lineups. Across over 1,800 possessions, Jose Alvarado had a net rating of 11.9. The top lineup that he played in, which was a bench unit, Jose Alvarado, Najee Marshall, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, Larry Nance Jr., was a plus 29.6. This guy just makes them better. When you look at Jose Alvarado's impact on almost every facet of the game, the team gets better. They score more points when he's on the court. They shoot better, goes with scoring points, right? They have a better field goal percentage when he's on the court. They get to the free throw line slightly higher than they do when he's on the court. Defensively, they give up fewer points when he's on the court. Teams shoot about 4% worse from the field with Jose Alvarado on the court. Teams turn the ball over at about 2.5% higher than they normally do when Jose's on the court. The only thing he doesn't really help here is team defensive rebounding, which given his size, that makes a ton of sense. But my goodness, is that an impactful player and someone who is going to really set the tone with a lot of these bench lineups and when they put him in, when he's also playing with some of the starters. He might be one of the biggest keys and impactful players on this team for their success, especially during the regular season, where if they can get the starters playing better and then the bench has a similar impact to last season, you're going to be in a real good spot and you are going to surprise people and maybe hit that over on wins and climb up in the standings. Jose Alvarado, we are not underestimating him this year. Look, it's a game-worn jersey behind me, so I better not underestimate him here. He is that important of a player. Look, it's the way he gets under players' skins. The fact that he's always hustling when he's out there on the court. He shot the ball better than he really had at any point before. 38% from 3. He played well in the Olympics for Puerto Rico as well, and we love to see that. And if he can carry some of that form over, he's going to be in a really good spot. He finished 6th in Sixth Man of the Year. I don't know if he'll actually ever win. It could be CJ's, award to lose this season. But Jose is going to be in the running with just the impact he makes. To finish 6th in Sixth Man of the Year, averaging just 7 points per game and 2 assists, it's pretty incredible because his impact is there. He forces steals. He just forces the opponent to hustle harder, which for bench units, that's not something they always can do. So Jose is not someone that I'm going to underestimate at any point in time this season. He has proven it at this point. He's also in a contract year, and I think that's what makes this kind of interesting. Making about $2 million this year. After this season, he's going to have made about $7 million total. A lot of money, but not by NBA standards. What is his contract going to be in the future, and can he earn himself a whole lot of money with a really productive and healthy, hopefully, season? He really could be in line for something like that, and I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the team this year. What about guys in training camp? Are they going to bring anything to this team this year? Let's break down a couple of new signings for the Pelicans and talk about if we're going to see any surprises in training camp. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And if you have a feel of how the game is going, they have the in-game betting. The line changes over the course of the game. If you know someone is a second-half team, you make some money off of that. And now, when you get started, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Guaranteed $200 in bonus bets. You're already a winner. When you place your first $5 bet, you can get in on the Pelicans opening night line of -6.5 over the Chicago Bulls. I like that number here. So visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook, to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. And by the way, if you're a new listener, become an everydayer, but also, look, I appreciate you making Locked On Pelicans part of the day. You get the idea of the type of coverage we're going to give you all season long, recapping basically every game. I'm going to do more bonus shows and things like that throughout the year too. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and just follow along wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now for your second listen, Locked On NBA. I'm on there on Wednesday. We're going to be breaking down some big Kawhi Leonard news, as well as news from Kristaps Porzingis. Injuries already maybe impacting the title race in the NBA. No offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA has you covered in 30 minutes or less. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Pelicans announced that they signed 3 players to training camp. I'm just going to read the press release here for you. The first we already knew of Isaiah Brockington, 6'4", 200 pounds, who appeared in 33 games for the Birmingham Squadron last year, where he averaged 12.4 points, 5.4 rebounds, 2.1 assists, and 1 steal in just under 30 minutes per game. Brockington played 1 game with the Pelicans last season, scoring 4 points in his NBA debut. The next player that they signed, Keon Brooks Jr., 6'7", 210 pounds, most recently averaged 21.1 points, 6.8 rebounds, 1.4 assists en route to first-team All-Pac-12 honors during the 2023-2024 season at the University of Washington. Brooks played on the Pelicans Summer League team, averaging 10 points, 3.5 rebounds in 21 minutes per game. And then finally, Galen Robinson Jr., 6'1", 190, appeared in 22 games for the Birmingham Squadron last season, 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 1.5 steals in 17 minutes of action. We also have heard the reports that they're going to be signing Elfrid Payton to a training camp deal too. So are we expecting any of these guys to make the team? Any surprises in training camp for New Orleans? So first and foremost, I mean this, and I got nothing here for you, that there just are no surprises. No surprises whatsoever is what I want in training camp. Remember a couple of years ago when Zion came in and it's like, oh, he's going to miss the start of the season or he's going to miss preseason, whatever, the foot injury thing. Oh, he'll play at some point. Oh, but I didn't say when during the regular, all of that stuff. Can we just get no surprises, please? Can we just get the surprise being everyone's healthy, everything's good? That's what I want in training camp. We're talking about it on Locked On NBA, but the Clippers were like, oh, by the way, Kawhi Leonard had a procedure on his knee. The swelling is finally going down from something back in March. We're going to hold him out of training camp a little bit and then ramp him up. Those are not good surprises. Those are not what you want in training camp. I'm hopeful we get none of that this season. We get that enough here in New Orleans. But beyond that, truthfully, I just don't really see any surprises. It's fun to look at some of these players that they're bringing in and going, oh, maybe they can make an impact. They're not going to. Their roster, for the most part, outside of one spot, is pretty much set. You have Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones. From there, you have Trey Murphy III. You have Jordan Hawkins, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, Javonte Green, Jose Alvarado, Yves Missi, Daniel Tice, Antonio Reeves, Carlo Makovich, and then Matt Ryan. Those are your 15 guys on the team right now. Only one of them is on a non-guaranteed deal, which means you can just waive him and he doesn't count against the salary cap. And that's Matt Ryan making about $2.1 million this year. They could waive him. They don't need to pay him that money, and they could sign someone to basically a very similar deal, and that's that. It seems like they're probably going to keep Matt Ryan and maybe just cut him later. The guarantee date isn't later on in the year. So when you look at Elfrid Payton, Isaiah Brockington, any of the other people that they're going to bring in during training camp, I just don't really see how anyone else is going to make the roster, even if they're a really big surprise. You know, if anything, this team needs more wing depth, maybe another big man. You have Trey Jemison on the two-way. I'm not counting him here in that, since it doesn't count against the salary cap. You know, if he plays well, they'll keep him on a two-way, maybe sign him towards the end of the regular season. But overall, I don't see any changes to this training camp roster. There might be some battles. The depth chart might change a little bit, but no, you're not going to see like a surprise guy make the roster and then make a run for big minutes or anything like that. They could end up signing someone to a two-way deal further down the line. They've done a good job of like actively using those, and I think they're one of the better teams in the NBA that does that. But when you look at this team, there just isn't room for anybody else right now. They have Jamal Cain on their other two-way deal, so one's open too because you get 3 of those. But this is a good time to go into the Pelicans when it comes to the salary cap, the luxury tax, and all of that. Right now, they have about total salaries of $174.5 million. The luxury tax threshold is $170.8 million. It gives them into the luxury tax about $3,645,000. Really, it's like 3.646, let's call it. That's going to mean they want to trade. Look, I think they're going to dodge the tax again. I will rightfully give them hell for that because I don't think they should. But right now, I don't know if this roster is worth paying the luxury tax for. It goes back to Kyra Lewis Jr. last year, where trading him made sense because there was no reason to pay the luxury tax to keep Kyra Lewis Jr. As it stands, I don't know if they should be in the luxury tax. I'd like them to, but if it's like Matt Ryan and Daniel Tice get waived or something like that, and that's how you shed the salary, like I'm not going to be overly concerned about them doing that kind of move. I'd like them to trade for someone that makes them better and then pay the luxury tax. They are about $2.275 million away from the first apron. They are actually not allowed to exceed that number. There's a little over $178 million in salary. They're about 2.272 away from that right now. They cannot go over that number at all. There's a second apron too that is scaring a lot of teams off because when you're in that, it gets really restrictive on the moves that you're allowed to make. But the Pelicans are literally not allowed to go into the second apron at all. One thing that's worth keeping in mind too when it comes to all of this is guys on minimum deals that the NBA tends to pay for the most part, almost all minimum deals. It's not coming out of like the team's pocketbook, but they still count against the salary cap and the luxury tax in the first apron, the second apron, and all of that, even if you're not directly paying the players here. So that's worth keeping in mind too on any moves that they could make. I think they're going to duck the tax partially because of the TV deal stuff. And this is something that if you're a longtime listener, I said the second it was announced that Diamond Sports, Bally Sports was going bankrupt last year, that this was not necessarily, or like 2 years ago, this is not necessarily a good thing. The Pelicans can recoup a lot of that money, but from what I've been told, they're losing about $18 million this season. The luxury tax estimated payout, if you're not in it, is going to be $15 to $18 million. If that's money that they had planned on spending, was budgeted for, now you don't get it, you need to try and recoup that money somewhere or just pull it from another bank account, which the team could do. But that's just not how teams operate. They need to kind of be like financially independent, doing their own thing. And that's likely what the Pelicans are going to do here too. So because of the lack of money coming in from the TV deal, I think they're going to try and recoup that money by ducking the luxury tax. So if we were to predict anything, any surprise here, it'd be someone's going to get waived, traded, something along those lines as they look to try and save some money here, likely in a Brandon Ingram deal. Now, you can go back to the show yesterday if you're an everydayer. That can be okay if Trey Murphy develops, if he progresses like we'd like to see. But if you were to trade Brandon Ingram at $36 million for someone making 30, you're under the luxury tax all of a sudden, or 2 players making 30 total. You're under the luxury tax, and then you can move one of those other players, and the team can put itself in a better financial position against the luxury tax. So I don't see any surprises with these guys making the roster, one, because the roster seems set. Matt Ryan's likely better than any of the other players that they would bring in, and because of the financial concerns around the team, kind of restricting them a little bit, limiting what they're capable of doing. It's the unfortunate reality of being a fan of this team. It sucks. It is what it is, in a sense. I'd like them to pay the luxury tax, not for this exact roster, but if you could, move Brandon Ingram for someone that makes more and really helps you, like you should do that and you should pay the tax. Maybe one day, but I'm, as of now, not expecting that to be the case this season. So a little bit disappointing news there, and hopefully just no weird, big surprises in training camp coming up. So next, Let's get into a little bit of fashion sense here. Have you seen the leaked new City Edition jersey for New Orleans? I'll give you my thoughts on it and what to expect a little bit with some of the colors and things like that this year. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Gametime. This is my go-to ticketing app because of all of the features that they have. And they have a new feature which I love called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I also love the all-in or the all-in pricing toggle. You've got to click it, and you do that. It's just going to show you the all-in pricing. You don't go to checkout, and all of a sudden your tickets cost like $100, $200 more. You just see the final price up front, so you know exactly what you're going to pay. And speaking of knowing exactly what you get, the view from your seat, if you're going to a place you've never been before, it's a really great feature so you can buy the exact tickets that you want. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday. No one else covers the team at this level, being credentialed, being at the practices, being at the games, talking to the players, the coaches, everyone around the team to bring you insight you can't get anywhere else Monday through Friday. So become an everydayer by subscribing to Locked On Pelicans wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube as well. We got over 10,000 Pelicans fans. Look, there's a lot of passion behind the team. It's a big year. It's going to be a lot of fun. Stay up to date with everything going on with the Pelicans right here. And now for your second listen, Locked On Saints. Ross Jackson is going to break down everything black and gold for you. What's going on with the center? What are they going to do with at least a week to prepare rather than an injury in the beginning of a game? That's what I want to know. Ross Jackson breaking down everything you want to know about the black and gold over the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's get into the jerseys here. City Edition jerseys leaking for the entirety of the NBA. What do you think of the Pelicans one? If you haven't seen it, go look it up right now. I'm not going to pull it up on here. You can go find it pretty easily. I will say this about it. They're keeping with the skeleton theme, and I told you last year that you were going to see that again this year. I expect to see more of that used in a variety of different ways. And I've long said, as of last season, said that I think they should just do an actual rebrand of the skeleton for, 5 to 8 years or so. And I think that would be a lot of fun because it was a hit last year. I liked the all black jerseys. The players liked them too. It was pretty cool and just different. And that's what we wanted to see from the team. The uniform this year is okay, in my opinion. I don't think it's incredible. It's purple, probably going to be darker than what it looks like on that rendering that we've seen of it. And it looks like it's got like bones is kind of like a texture, a pattern up and down the entirety of the jersey. You would imagine that's going to be the case for the shorts as well, which haven't leaked. Look, I like it. It looks weird without the number, and I think seeing the neon green number there, the NOLA on the front is pretty good too. But it seems like they should have done more with the skeleton other than just using a bone. It's kind of strange to me. I get it fits in the voodoo theme, the skeleton theme, but you need that logo to be front and center, and that's not what they did with this jersey here. I like it, but personally wouldn't buy one. I should have bought a Herb Jones one last year, and I didn't, and I'm upset because you can't get them anymore. But this year, it's I like them. I think it's going to look better on the court than what we're expecting. Same thing with some of the leaks from the Pelicans jerseys in the past. They always look better on the court, and I think that's important to keep in mind with this jersey, that it might go out there and there might be something we're not seeing from it, and it's going to blow us away. That kind of happened last year too, where at first we were like, And I'd seen some early renderings 2 years ago for that one, and they weren't incredible. This year, I think the renderings show that it could be good. I just wouldn't buy one just yet. For whatever reason, when it comes to that, I don't love it as I did last year, but I think this is some of the branding and theming that you're going to see with the Pelicans going forward. A lot of teams do these kind of mini refreshes, rebrands, where they go to a different logo or an old logo, in the case of the Pistons this year, over, for a couple of years, and then 8 years later, you refresh it again. the Pelicans feel like they're kind of in line for that and should be doing something for that. And I think you'll see something coming with that in the nearish future, but I couldn't tell you when. And it just feels like they need to do something. The home and aways have had little tweaks, changing the font, the association, the statement jersey, whatever they're called, the home and aways, right? The blue, the white, those are the main ones. Those have had little tweaks in stuff, but nothing like a massive refresh. And I think those could really use it. I don't know if anyone particularly loves the dark blue navy jerseys. That was originally the away jersey for the team. The white just feels a little plain. I think that could have a little bit more edge to it. That's why I think a rebrand to the purple, neon green, and black would be a lot of fun. I think that would really work as the color scheme for this team that no one else is really doing at the NBA level. So a lot of dark navy jerseys. So a lot of red jerseys, even if I in general like the Reds here, though I don't love the change that they made last year with them. And you'll see more of those in prominent games this coming season from what I've been told. So I'd like just something more different. I applaud the Pelicans for doing something different. I don't hate the new City Edition jerseys, just not my favorite. I really liked last year's. I hope they keep some of the theming going more with the court like that. I loved the City Edition or the in-season tournament court last year, the purple, all that. We'll see if that is going to be red or a different color this year. I liked when they did the City Edition court, the black outline on all of that. That was great too. More stuff like that just makes it kind of different, fun when it comes to these games, I think is really important. Look, you sell a lot of merch. They sold a ton of City Edition stuff last year. You would go to games and you saw a ton of black. You saw the purple too. Those highlighter neon green hoodies that they made, which looked pretty good, to be perfectly honest with y'all. I like a lot of what they've done. I really hope they start to kind of embrace the things that just make them more unique and different from other teams. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. Let me know what you think about the City Edition jerseys. If you haven't seen them already, go look them up. Tell me what you think. Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLAJake on Twitter. Appreciate y'all listening. This has been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm going to be back with y'all tomorrow.